started off in independent baseball, and then signed with the Texas Rangers and got released, went back to independent baseball, and then signed with the Texas Rangers again. So it was a long journey. So, but I remember I was in AAA with the Colorado Rockies. Brad Klontz, some of you guys, I don't know if you guys remember Brad Klontz. He was in '97 with the Braves. He was out of the bullpen submarine guy. He was our closer, and look, man, he had 30 something saves that year in AAA with the Rockies, and I was if it was a save situation, I was in the eighth and he was in the ninth. Well, I happened to have a friend flying to town that I hadn't seen, a college teammate that I hadn't seen in probably 5 years or more. Just out of the blue, sent me a message, an actual piece of mail to the clubhouse one time, and we set up a visit for him to come out, stay with me and my wife, and he actually came down and sat right beside the bullpen in Colorado Springs, and we talked forever. Come the eighth inning, it's 3-0 or 3-1, and they got Brad Klontz up, and without going to me, and I was sitting on like a 2 ERA. I was having a really good season in Colorado Springs, but everybody started like, "Hey, what's going on here? What's going on?" And I was 31 years old, by the way, so I was kind of feeling like I was on my way out anyway. And then didn't pitch. We ended up winning the game, won the clubhouse. Ben Petrick, some of you guys may know Ben. He was a catcher for the Rockies for a little while. He's got actually a book called, I think, 40,000 to 1. I'm not sure exactly the name of the book, but Ben's got Parkinson's, and he found out later during his career, so he retired because of that. But we actually got called up together. Ben got called up, comes out of the clubhouse, and everybody's, I think Rick Sofield was our manager. Rick was like, "Hey, Ben Petrick, big leaguer," so he gets called up, goes back in his office. I'm sitting there, no big deal. And then 2-3 minutes later, Rick comes out of the office and says, "Matt Miller, I need to talk to you." And the place went crazy because I think they all knew that it was happening. And I'm fortunate to not burn any bridges in my career. So I was a pretty good teammate, I think, with just about everybody, and had, a lot of love for all my teammates. And so I think that was, it was just, it was a big moment for me because so many of my teammates, got involved with hoopla. So got caught in the office, and I think some of you guys may know Mike Gallego was with the A's when they won the World Series in '89, little second baseman. He was in there, and Rick, "Hey man, it's happening for you." And I just remember the tears just started rushing down my face, and it's definitely a huge moment, man, especially 31 years old and feeling like you're on your way out of the game. Fortunately, I got to play 4 or 5 more years in the big leagues, and it was a special moment, man. It really was. Come out of the clubhouse, go out and find my wife balling. I don't know if she knew what was going on. My friend was probably not really knowing what was going on either. So, but it ended up being a really cool moment. I remember getting and this is kind of a cool story to go along with it. I remember getting our flights to Pittsburgh, where I made my debut, but everybody gets first class, and I gave the seat to my wife, and so that was kind of a cool story. But
so my story started in high school. I was playing varsity baseball as a leftover out in Arizona, and the craziness about it, I got hurt. I was in a car accident, and basically played half a season my senior year. Had no offers to go play college baseball whatsoever as soon as high school ball ended, and was going to go to the University of Arizona, just go to school with all my buddies, and baseball was done at that point. And instead of going down to Cancun for our senior class trip, there was a gentleman locally that invited myself and a couple other guys to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks and play baseball, similar to a travel baseball team for the first time. And I faced Cherry Creek, Colorado. And at the time, Cherry Creek was like Midland. They were like Tri-State Arsenal. I mean, they were the who's who out west. And Josh Bard was on that team. Darnell McDonald was on that team. Donzel was on that. I mean, there was just tons of guys that were all drafted guys. So anyhow, I pitched against them, did well, and had one lone opportunity to go to a junior college in Kansas, and played 2 years at JUCO, and then went to Charlotte. And then after that was non-drafted. and came back to Kansas, was living in Lawrence, Kansas, was working full time, was teaching baseball lessons. And this kid was a high school kid at Lawrence High School. He was a catcher, and the Indians were actually looking at him. And it was crazy because I was the one throwing to him, just happened to be throwing to him. The scout, his name's Steve Abney. He goes, "Hey, I want to see you throw again." So I came back and I threw. And he's like, "I want to see you throw again." Came back and I threw again. And it was late October. He invited myself and my girlfriend at the time to an Italian restaurant in Lawrence, Kansas, which is like, okay, you go to an Italian restaurant in Lawrence, Kansas, Midwest place, you should be eating steak, right? But at that point, they offered me a contract to go play with the Cleveland Indians as an undrafted guy. So I had missed that summer of, everybody gets drafted in June. They go play that half season, stuff like that. So I come into spring training in 2000. I know nobody. I go out, I play. I'm on Mahoney Valley's roster. We go for our 3 days off in between regular spring training and then come into extended. And Johnny Gorel is our field coordinator at the time. And Mullion goes, "Hey, Mullion, you got to go up and see Ross Adkins." And I'm like, "Oh, great, man." I got released day one of extended spring training. And I get called up to A-ball, which was in Columbus, Georgia. Play half a season there, go to Kinston, play half a season there, and then CC gets called up to the big leagues from AA, and I go to AA. And Eric Wedge is the manager in AA. And the reason I'm bringing this story up is because it all ties in together. But then Eric comes to me. It's the last game of the season. We're playing Altoona in Altoona. We're in the playoff hunt. And Eric comes up to me, gives me the ball. And, I didn't know this guy from Adam. I just knew he was a manager. I knew he was a hard ass. That's all I knew. He goes, "Hey," "you're taking CC's spot, and don't tonight because we need this win." I'm like, "Jesus Christ, man." Like, really? Like, I'm just getting here. So anyhow, the rest of I pitched that night. I do well. So we go to big league camp the next year, and then I'm in big league camp for a couple years. 2003 rolls around, though. I'm in AAA in Buffalo. It's early July. I'm pitching lights out. It's the best season I've had. And I go and I'm facing Ottawa at home, July 3rd. There's 15, 16,000 fans there in Buffalo, it was awesome. Playing there, I absolutely loved it. And first inning, I give up a run, unearned run to Tim Raines Jr. He comes around and scores. So I'm losing 1-0. I get pulled after the first inning. I have no idea why, no clue. And I'm freaking livid. Marty Brown is our manager. Terry Clark is our pitching coach. And I go off on Marty. I'm like, "What the f-? Man, why are you taking me out? I'm fine." So then Terry TC pulls me down into the hallway down there, down in the stairs. He's like, "Stanley," "you got to settle down, man. You got to chill out." He's like, "How are you going to show your ass like that to Torrey Hunter and Jock Jones and all these other guys?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Dude, you just got called up to the big leagues, man." He's like, "That's why we pulled you out of the game. You got called up to the big leagues." And everybody else knew, as a starter, you normally show up a couple hours before the game and everybody else was there. So the bullpen guys were all looking around the dugout there. They saw, and I just broke down, man. I just started crying because it was one of those things where as a non-drafted free agent, you never expect it. You never know what's going to happen because the next day you could be packing up your bags, headed home.
Anyways, I was in Akron, Ohio. I was in AA with the Mets at the time. We were traveling to Akron, Ohio. Game 1 there, and I was catching every day at the time. Caught the first game. Next day, my parents were in town, so we went out to dinner after the first game. The manager always put the lineup up the night before, and I was in the lineup. So I'll go to dinner for a little bit, have a beer, and then go home. And the next day, we were in the middle of batting practice. I'm hitting in Group 1, and the manager called me behind the cage. He says, "Hey, Marco Oliveros was the manager. He's a Puerto Rican guy." He says, "Papi, you missed curfew last night." I said, "I didn't miss curfew." He says, "You missed curfew. I checked the rooms. You weren't in there." I said, "All right, Skipper, whatever you think." But I said, I'm not going to argue with you. And he says, "I'm going to take you out of the lineup today." Oh, Jesus. All right. Took me from the lineup. And So I finished my round of hitting. He called me back. He says, I'm taking you out of the lineup because you're going to the big leagues. And as Matt said, you can't control your emotions. I mean, it was just, you never would. I mean, I was 22 at the time, but I was just like shaking. I was crying. I mean, and then to have it experience with my parents, and then my girlfriend was there, who is now my wife. That to experience all of that together was something special. And then I made my debut in Colorado against the Rockies, and I was fortunate enough. Jerry Manuel was a skipper, and he let me. He told me when I got there on September 1st. He says, "You're going to have today off, and then you're going to have tomorrow off, and then you're going to catch the day game on the 3rd." So he says, enjoy these 2 days, catch the bullpen guys so you get used to them. But he says, just take this all in for 2 days, no pressure. You won't be playing. We got 3 guys here, and just to kind of get settled in. And that was, again, as Matt said, a day I'll never forget.
The hardest I ever threw in my life was high school.
It is.
I mean, I touched 95 in high school. I sat 90 to 94, like a 2-3 guy. From the time I got the pro ball, I never threw that hard again the rest of my life. So like, I may have been a late round draft pick or something, maybe, but I tell everybody, I honestly don't think, because I don't have projectability. I don't have height. I mean, I was sub 6 foot, 172 pounds when I graduated high school. The thing that got me seen was I had a low 3/4 arm slot, and I had a lot of run and sink, and I threw hard. So that got me the looks, you know what I mean? And even though I got drafted, like you said, I had to go play in that summer collegiate wood bat league for them to even offer me money. Yep. So like they took me later as a flyer, and then I had to pitch well in an all college wood bat league to get an offer. After like literally every person in the scouting system for the Indians had seen me throw, because they made me make like 6 or 7 starts there. It's not like I made 2 or 3 starts and like, oh, here we go. I had to pitch like 45 innings in this league.
The next generation is going to embrace a different look. We all talked about it, a different angle, but still, it's still the game. We need to see how this all turns out, because this drive line and all this new stuff is just starting, and we haven't seen it after 5 or 10 years. Nobody's talking about all these big league hitters are striking out. Nobody's talking about, I think one of you guys talked about base running. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going away in baseball, and at some point they're going to come back. We all know that. Nobody's bigger than the game.
What's your average exit velocity, and what's your max? And, we got to try to make those 2 numbers get as close as we can. So if Chris Snopek is a 101 max exit velocity, but his average is, 84 or 83, like that's an issue. So for me, I'm just trying to find a way that I can get these 12-year-old kids and hire really high average exit velocity, obviously with good mechanics and stuff, because at the end of the day, if I can get these kids a really good average exit velocity, they're going to be a lot more successful.
Find what's best for each individual player. So creating competition with leaderboards and stuff like that within the team, and having them something to strive for. We do 5-10-5 testing. We do L drill testing, vertical jump testing, broad jump testing, left to right lateral bounds, right to left lateral bounds. And we test every kid from 7 to 17. And honestly, the most fun days we have in the academy are those number days. So that's giving them something to work towards, not just a velo, not just a run and gun throw, or a pull down. I hate that term, but whatever it may be, we are giving them something to go after and fight towards. So getting them to understand, like, their number is their number. We have a certain number we'd like to get to, but each one has their own individual number. And then going back to kind of what Thole was talking about, Thole and I even sat down and looked at some of this stuff at the end of end of my career, in 17, in Reno, and just kind of, how do you blend that? So, we're just starting to do it a lot with our older kids, with the 15s, 16s, and 17s and the 14s, is having them throw the diamond kinetics ball and getting feedback on every pitch. And then just adapting what they're going to do and how will they blend what is best for them, and then blend that into how do you attack hitters with that. So if you're a low spin rate guy and you only throw 4 seams, you're just hurting yourself. Whether you're a D2, a D1, a D3, or you just want to be a good high school player, whatever that is, we want to find what's going to make you most successful for you.
Why you guys don't hear coaches asking that much about the metrics is because if they're a good coach, they should already have done their homework and have that already. And now more than ever is when they're calling, like they're relying on you guys to figure out what kind of kid they actually are, what kind of kid they would get into their program. You know, like, is it a kid that's going to come in and he's going to be, you know, that energy giver, that guy that, you know, that is going to grind in the classroom and do all this stuff?
Well, Matt, if I could jump in, man, I mean, Colangelo, we're in PBR last year, and I'm looking at one of our outfielders, and they can't be there, and they're both fighting about money as far as trying to offer him, you know, a chance to come to those schools, and they're asking me, you know, what I think, and I'm thinking, you know, this is the kid's decision, but look, the guy is a great hitter, he handles the bat, you know, doesn't strike out much, good exit velo, but you know, that I think that Max is right. I mean, these guys are going to rely on us as far as the end products. This data, this is what gets them going. It starts the momentum. But in the end, they're going to ask guys like y'all on the phone, what do you think? You know, if they can't be there because of COVID, you know, it's a competition down here in the South. I'm sure just like the ACC, it's a race. And so they're all trying to get all kinds of angles. The data, the metrics help, but man, guys like y'all can really convince these coaches, you know, to make that offer.
To my point earlier on, I mean, that's the eye test. I don't need a stopwatch. You could line up 50 catchers in front of me right now, have them loose, have them all throw to second base. I'll watch each one throw, and I'm going to be able to tell who can throw and who can't throw. I don't need a stopwatch to say, oh, well, that kid threw a 1-9 or a 2-0. Like, it doesn't matter. You're right. There's no hitter. The ball's coming at a different arm angle. There's no batter standing in there. There's a lot of variables. And I think, and I was not a great thrower by no means. I was actually a terrible thrower. I have a noodle for an arm. But the one thing that I had the ability to do was just get the ball down to second base. That's what I did. I've one-hop more balls down to second base than maybe any other player to ever play in the big leagues. But that's just what I did. I could get it out and get it down there. I still threw guys out. It didn't make or break my career. That doesn't matter. And this is where those type of things. And I'll be honest, Dan. I teach my kids that come to your showcases. I'll show them how to cheat, and I'll show them how to throw a 1-9. I can do that. That's easy. The piece for me, and this is where I would love to spend a lot of time with high school and college catchers, is the intangibles of the game. That's what separates a Division I catcher versus a Division III catcher. How you run the game, how you manage the game. So I think you can take the pop time thing and you can evaluate. Dan, you've watched enough baseball. All you guys, you can evaluate a catcher just by watching him throw. You don't have to be a catcher to know what a good throw coming out is. You can tell, boy, he's got good feet. Man, he gets the ball to his throwing hand quick. Those are all things that matter over the course of a long season.
I mean, I just think it boils down to when you have like compassion and you're kind and you treat people, you know, with respect, like Stanley was talking about, getting kids to respect the game, getting kids to understand the game, getting kids to understand the kind of correlation. I used to always hate it how everybody was like baseball and life, but like once you're like out of the game and you're out of the pro game, put it that way. Like when you get out of the pro game, and it's like all the time, every time you talk to a player, you go back to correlating that. You go back to saying how life and how baseball, how, you know, you could be 0 for 3 with 3 punch outs. And then you come up in the, you know, with the game on the line, you know, bases loaded or winning runs on second, whatever it is, or you can make the diving play. So, you know,
earlier in the 2012 season, I got trucked at home plate. I ended up going on the concussion DL. I do my rehab. I go to Buffalo to do my rehab, and Major League Baseball doesn't sign that. The doctors don't clear me for some reason. They finally clear me in the third inning of the game, and they insert Wally Backman was the manager of that team, inserts me into the game, end up playing the game, calls me in the office, says, "How do you feel?" I said, "Well, my rehab days are up. I'm ready to go to the big leagues." So it was a big conversation between Terry Collins, Sandy Alderson, my agent, myself. They finally made the decision to call me up, which was June 1st, 2012. I get to New York, and that night, Johan Santana threw a no-hitter, and I was lucky enough to be behind the plate. But the unique thing about it is, and this is what I always say about the game, I remember like it was yesterday, Johan warming up for the game, and he ended up shutting his bullpen down in the middle. Like as he's throwing his bullpen, he says, "He doesn't have it tonight. I don't feel good." And we end up throwing a no-hitter. But it's interesting because he was a guy that goofed. He goofed the whole time. I mean, every inning, he always was clowning around when he was pitching. And the sixth inning, he stopped clowning, sat at the other end of the bench, mind his own business. And that's kind of when we really started feeling it. Terry Collins, it was interesting because Johan was, he wasn't the same Johan that everybody remembers in Minnesota. And his pitch count was ramping up quite a bit. So Terry Collins and Dan Worthen, who's the pitching coach, was coming to me saying, "Hey, we got to be cautious of the pitch count. Like, we can't just pitch around guys every time we get to 2-0, 3-1. It's unfortunate, but this is what we have to do." And we somehow navigated the last few innings and ended with 134 pitches. But